10 minutes, and I'm going to make a hard stop on this one unless you're really entertaining us. But usually I stop this pretty nasty. Right there is like, you got to stop. But here it is. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Nirav Patel. And Nirav, you are on team, let me guess, you are on team number, you're the sports team, aren't you?
Right.
Team two, right?
That's right.
Darn, I'm good. Okay. So Nirav, you're going to talk tonight on being an entrepreneur. And even though this doesn't sound like it could be any, useful, use your imagination. The other teams, use your imagination. Try to think of how you can use this so you can gather up some bonus points. Like, hey, maybe I might start my own company and use Nirav's idea. Work with it. I mean, it's great to learn something from somebody else. Anyway, Nirav, I'm going to make you the presenter, and share your screen, and everybody please enjoy. Ready, go.
So I actually use this in a lot of colleges and universities that I speak at. It can be translated across the board. It doesn't have to be if you don't want to be an entrepreneur or anything along those lines. So it's kind of more the fact of moving forward in your career. Use it a lot, and so far it's been a hit with most college university students. They actually get a kick out of it. I'm going to do the short version. This usually I go for about an hour and a half, but this is the short version. And 90% of pretty much startups fail. The video I'm not going to play, by the way. You'll be able to download that later since it'll take up the entire 10 minutes. 10% really succeed. I've been through, it's my third startup right now. I sold my first two, and now I'm on my third. So moving on, how to be that 10% that actually succeeds. Entrepreneurial business favors the open mind. You guys know Richard Branson, the guy who started Virgin, who sued British Airways just to get ahead and get his name out there. This is pretty self-explanatory stuff. Number one, you got to be an effective leader, and you got to understand people. Motivating is one of the biggest things you could actually do when you're actually an entrepreneur or in corporate America, because it's all about building real relationships with people in the real world, customers, employees, investors, vendors, and that's what business is all about. And one part of leadership is that great leaders, as Colin Powell says, are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt and offer solutions that everyone can understand. I use the philosophy, it's called KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid, and that usually works out pretty well for us. Number two, come up with a truly differentiated product for a large growing market, and most importantly, you got to have a value proposition that customers are willing to pay for. If you guys watch Shark Tank, you'll have an idea of exactly, where these guys are coming from, the value proposition. You'll see valuation, so on and so forth. I'll leave the quotes out since it probably will take up a little time, but you can kind of read them on the PowerPoint you can download, and that one's from Sam Walton. You got to love what you do and have no problem working. I had to write tail off because I didn't want to write ass off, but day in and day out, years and years. And realistically, I work 7 days a week. So, it's honestly working your butt off. Number four, actually know what you're doing at the end of the day and have a solid knowledge and better yet experience behind it all. Obviously, finance and running a business. My first company I started, I was 22 years old. Boy, I had no idea what I was doing. I almost bankrupted the company, but I got lucky. So I learned a lot about finance and business at that point. You got to be a good manager. You actually have to know what that means. I've worked when I was younger for managers that have absolutely no clue what being a manager is all about. So you got to really understand if you're a manager and how to be a manager. Number six, there's only two more. Have something inside of you, something that really drives you, and do whatever it takes and win and persevere at the end of the day. And if you've seen the movie We Are Marshall, play till the whistle blows. I mean, that movie's all about perseverance. A whole football team dies in a plane crash, and they bring back the program. And it took, I forgot how many 20 years for them to even become successful, to get a successful season out of it. Make smart decisions based on solid information. from expert sources and your own intuition. It's good stuff. And finally, you got to have the courage and the guts to take big risks, challenge the status quo, face the truth, and do the right thing even when it's hard to do, realistically. And I'll tell you, you're going to have a lot of naysayers. You see it in corporate America, and then you see it also in the entrepreneurial world. There's a lot of naysayers. You got to go with your gut and your heart at the end of the day and follow what you really believe in. Now, this is one thing I found, and I always found this very intriguing, and that everybody got a kick out of it. So if A, B, C, D, all the way to Z equals 1 through 26, well, then knowledge equals 96%, if it goes through. Hard work, 98%. Now, these are really both important, but they fall short of 100%. Attitude. You take the attitude, and that equals 100%. So you got to have knowledge and hard work, but your attitude makes the world of difference in the corporate world and or in the entrepreneurial world. And then the video. But that's a short hour and presentation down in. Don, how much time did I take?
You took like 6 or 7 minutes, but I'm loving this. This is a great inspirational talk. I love this.
This video is by far one of the best videos that I've ever found, and it's been a hit so far. So if everyone has, if you have time eventually to download the PowerPoint, you can watch it. It's about 7 minutes long. Could you put your whole PowerPoint pack, like the whole 1 hour thing? I'd love to go through this and watch it. Or is this, no, this is it. It's already downloadable, and the videos are embedded in. What, Nirav, what type of businesses have you started? I mean, you said you started 2 and you're on your 3rd. What industries are you in? The first one I started was a healthcare company. Actually, it was more based on wellness, nutritional, weight loss products that we actually had developed for physician practices. Somebody at that point. Wait, just 1 second. Whoever's got their computer on their microphone, could you put yourself on mute? Well, I'll put people on. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's going. You there? I'm still here, Nirav. Yep. Okay. Keep talking, Nirav. So the first company, it was nutritional wellness weight loss products just for physician practices that was backed up by the physician's desk reference. So it was a legit product line we had developed, and at that point, managed care was really affecting medical practices, and you're seeing doctors' revenue starting to fall. So this was another revenue generator, and they could actually stand behind it because it was backed up by the physician's desk reference. And then I sold that. Someone actually offered to buy it, and I sold it for probably less than I should have. Hindsight's 20/20. But when you're 22 years old and you get a big check, you just take it and run. That's kind of how I did it. Then I went and worked in my first passion was broadcasting. I used to love broadcasting. I was in it before I started healthcare, and then went into that, and then did an MBA, traveled around the world, and came up with an idea of telemedicine, which I had a group of radiologists overseas that were really excited to go to telemedicine and teleradiology. They said, look, we need someone to start the company. We'll work for you. And that point was, all right. So within the first year, actually after the first year, we went international, and then sold it out in 2012 to another radiology group. And then I got involved back in broadcasting, and now own 5 radio stations. Wow. It just sounds, you got a passion. You obviously like the medical field and also the broadcasting. It's fascinating. You took those 2 things, which are seemingly unrelated, and you've parlayed them into a very successful career. That's just really remarkable. Thank you. Now I got to figure out what's next. It's that ADD in me, I guess. I got to get something new. Well, I'm impressed. So, well,
Now I feel inadequate here, so we're gonna pass the baton on to somebody else, unless anybody has any questions for Nirav. Okay, Nirav, I think you're off the hook for now.
All right, cool.
Okay, I'm gonna make you a participant, and Alex Krawczyk, I'm gonna make you next because you're next on my list here. How about that?
Sounds good, Don. Thanks.
Okay, I'm making you the presenter. Okay.
All right. Just
Okay, go get 'em,
confirm for
Alex.
me. All right, I'm going to share my screen. You guys see my screen?
I sure can.
Cool. All right, guys. Hey, Nirav, great job, man. Thanks for going first.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So real quick, what I wanted to do, I'm a bit of a life hacker, I call myself, and I love using technology that will help me do things quicker and more efficiently and more effectively in my life. And I wanted to share 4 quick things with you guys, some of which you may already be aware of, some of which maybe you're not. So 3 of which I'm hoping that all of us might be able to use for our capstone projects. So without further ado, the first thing I wanted to share with you guys was, I'm not sure how many of you guys use Google Docs, but one thing I found very, very helpful is a citation tool called EasyBib, Easy Bibliography, in Google Docs. I'm sharing right now on my screen. If you use a Google Doc, you can just go to add-ins and search for Easy Bibliography Creator. Go ahead and click Manage Bibliography. You're going to want to find an article. So let's say you found a piece of research. By the way, this is adding, just a step back, it's quickly adding references to your Google Doc or your paper. This does all of the work for you. So right here, I've got a journal article that I want to go ahead and reference. I'm going to paste that in. Hold on, that was not what I wanted to paste in. Give me 1 second. Let's do this one. We'll copy that. We will put that in. Go ahead and click search. You see it already brought up the article for me. I'm going to go ahead and click select. It's going to pull in the information, and it's going to automatically add a bibliography to the document in APA or MLA. If I want APA, I just check that, click it, it changes it for me here in the Google Doc. Kind of cool. You don't have to worry about all that APA stuff or MLA or Chicago reference style citations. So that's the first hack. Again, and by the way, I'll put all this stuff up in Blackboard, Don, for people because I know I got to go quickly. I'll put all these references and stuff, pardon my pun there with citations, I'll put everything, a list of stuff, all 4 of these things up in Blackboard if anybody wants to take a look at it later. The next thing I thought would be helpful for everyone, like Nirav, I present occasionally and I hate death by PowerPoint. So I like to create a story whenever I present at a conference or anything like that, and I use a lot of stock photos, but I hate to pay for them. So I found 2 websites where you can actually go and get really cool free stock photography to use in your presentations, and I thought that might be helpful for everyone in their capstone presentation as well if you want to tell more of a story. So I will go ahead and post these 2 links. They're 2 really good websites where you can go that take you to further down rabbit holes. So you can go to different websites to pick up free stock photography. And that's number 2. The next thing I tell you guys, actually number 3, I couldn't live without. There's this really simple tool called Pocket. So what this tool does is essentially bookmarks. It saves anything, any article that you want to read later. So there's another one out there, I think called Instapaper. I use Pocket. It's available on all your devices as well as the browser. So for example, if I was on this page right now in Chrome, and I wanted to pocket this page, so save it for later, it'll be available on all my devices. I'll just click this little Chrome extension up here in the upper right. This page is saved. Now if I go back here and I look at my list up here, how to save Pocket, it's already up here, and it's also on all my devices, whether Android or iPhone or anything like that. So if you want to, what this is useful for, a lot of times I will go in and take a look at, for example, when I'm doing some research, I want to go ahead and save hey Don, would you mind muting everybody else?
Sure, I'll be happy.
If you can do that. Thanks, buddy. If you can go ahead and save any articles or pieces of research that you really want to reference later. So that's one thing, hopefully that'll work for you guys for the capstone. Again, it's called Pocket. Here's a little just screenshot of it, what it looks like on the iPhone. Again, everything syncs, so it's across all your devices. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys probably won't be helpful for, well, maybe not for the capstone project, but I love using word clouds, especially for one particular thing. Whenever I'm hiring someone and I'm writing a job description or someone is hiring me, like especially earlier in my career, maybe like 5-10 years ago, if I got a job description, it was always really interesting to me because I would read the job description or I'll write a job description. And the job description, for example, let me pull one up here. I found one here in Cary, a data scientist intern at Rail Inc. And it's a local company here in Cary, North Carolina. And I was looking through this job description and I'm like, well, this is a lot of information, right? I mean, how do I really like pull it out and really understand what it's saying to me, right? And so what I started using was a word cloud. So I'll copy and paste it into these free tools online. It'll start to do the data viz for me. But what's interesting about it is, and we all know as kind of data scientists, analysts, is that, you know, you might look at a job description over here and you think it says one thing, but once you actually start to visualize the data, you may start to realize that they're actually looking for something totally different than what you thought. Or you may actually be able to go into the interview, you know, calling out a few key terms that maybe they didn't even think that they were important in the job description or highlighted, but they will be really important. Like this one, it looks like Rail. You should definitely know about Rail, or you should be able to provide something. Or and these are just little like kind of life hacks, especially this word cloud one that I love taking a look at because it really does add some sort of you know, objective insight to anything. I use it for job descriptions, whether I'm writing one or reviewing one. You could really use it for anything in life. So I tend to do this quite often because it helps me be objective in terms of looking at some information. So that's it for me, Don. Those are my 4 little life hacks with people. I'll share all this stuff up in Blackboard.
I love that. Can you answer me a quick question? Go back to this word cloud. You were clicking on this thing instantly. Is this did you just copy and paste it into this word cloud, or was this
Exactly. Yep. It's a copy and paste. So you can go ahead and go back. I'll go ahead and leave this page. Let's say, let me just go back and copy some text in here. So let's say I just want to copy the whole job description. I'll go to the word cloud. I'll copy and paste it. I'll word it out, and then all of a sudden you can change the fonts. So let's use something a little more legible. Let's click apply, and then all of a sudden there it is.
And it doesn't have things like the and if and is and stuff. So obviously it takes that stuff out.
You know, that's a good question, Don. I usually use one called Wordle, but Wordle doesn't work in Chrome because of I think it's a Java. I forget if it's Java or something else that has an issue. So I had to actually find an alternative here. I don't know. It might depend on the tool that you're using. That's a really good question. But it does look like it omitted it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. That's good. So this is interesting. I'm gonna so this is called Word It Out. Is the website?
This one is, yeah. I'll go ahead and put up the 3 that I'm familiar with. Tag Crowd is another one, and then Wordle, and then Word It Out.
This is really good stuff. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I was really hoping people would do, is little things like this. And incidentally, this is for the other students in the class. There was a student who did that, or a group last quarter that did that, and it was for job descriptions, believe it or not. And they would put these Wordles out there, or these word clouds, and it really had an impact on their presentation. It really sort of stressed their point home, and I thought about it, and I said, well, a lot of the other groups could have done this as well. It would have. So this is something you ought to consider putting in your talk. It's a simple thing, but it really has a powerful impact on your presentation. So just a thought. So thanks for sharing that, Alex.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's see. Well, does anybody have any questions for Alex here? Otherwise, I'm going to draft somebody else. Nope. It does. You think you answered everybody's question? You're going to post something too.
Yep, I'll post it up in Blackboard.
Perfect. Okay, who wants to go next here?
I'll do it. This is Sophia.
Sophia, you officially are now number 3 on the list. Just a sec here.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
We sure can.
Awesome. All right. So I was going to talk about a tool called CartoDB. So for context, a few months ago, I got kind of recruited into a consulting project that required me to make a bunch of really fancy maps. And not knowing D3 or any other good tools, I sort of completely panicked, and then I found this, and it's completely and totally saved my butt. So I wanted to share this with everybody else. So I have an Excel sheet that looks pretty much like this, and all this is a bunch of totally fake, for the most part, data about physicians and their office locations. So I have an address, latitude and longitude, and then two variables that are count of the doctors at each location and the year of practice open. So I'm going to create a bunch of maps using this. So I'm going to go into CartoDB. It takes literally like 30 seconds to set up a new account. And I'm going to drag this file over here. And hopefully it's going to convert it into a real mappable file. There we go. So now I just drop this file in and click on Map View, and voila, I have all of my locations mapped, which is nice enough by itself, but then I can do all sorts of fun things with my map. So for example, let's go into Wizard and see what we can do. So for example, let's say I want to look at a chloroplast map. And this is basically color coding my points based on the count of physicians. So my light yellows are the offices with the fewest physicians, and the red ones are the offices with the largest number. Or let's see, I could do it by category. It doesn't necessarily make sense in this context, but it's possible if you have categorical data. I can create a bubble map. So here, the size of the bubble is basically representing the number of doctors at each office. Or I can do all sorts of really fun things, like a heat map. So that heat map is actually showing the number of doctors at each location and which parts of Miami essentially have the most doctors. My favorite one out of all of these is actually a torque map, which is essentially a representation of points over some time. So let's say that, for example, I wanted to look at how different physician offices appeared over time. So if you recall here in my data, I had the year that the practice opened in my data. So now if I go into Map View and I tell it that my time column is actually in the year the practice opened, and I'm going to say I want my torque to be cumulative, and I'm going to change a bunch of variables here to basically make it look nicer, but they're totally not particularly important. And say I want to change the colors. And what we have now is essentially a map that shows over time how the number of offices changed in a location. So you can imagine you can actually do all sorts of fun animations with this. I think my favorite one that I've seen that unfortunately I didn't pull a link to was the number of mentions about Beyonce's new album on social media and the way that you could watch the different parts of the world light up as different parts of the world sort of woke up and the album was released on a certain day and they tweeted about it. But regardless, let's go back to bubble map and see what else we can do with this. So on the bubble map here, I can customize my map in all sorts of ways. So for example, I can obviously change the colors and it will remap it for me. But I can also add some info windows. So for example, let's say that when I hover over a particular point, I actually want it to show the address. So I just click the address here, and now when I hover, it sort of shows up. And let's say that if I wanted, when I click, I actually wanted to show something else. Let's say I want to show the address and the count of doctors and the year the practice opened. Now if I go here and I click on it, voila. I can do things like modify the legend, so I can give it a nice pretty title, say count of doctors. I can modify all sorts of other things. I can add filters to the data, which are really SQL filters. I can change the SQL that actually, the SQL query that was used to pull data from my original table. But I think the nicest thing about this is that basically all of these individual components are stored in these CSS tags, which I can modify. So, for example, I could go directly into a CSS and type in the number of the color that I want if I wanted a specific font, and it would just change it for me. But it really would give you a lot of room for customization. It's actually, it sort of creates the basic framework for you in literally, you just saw 3 minutes, and then you can sort of use it to customize it to really something very fancy. So just to show you an example, this is not necessarily the fanciest thing, but this is actually part of the project that I was doing for work, and this was meant to be a tool for a healthcare company to use to figure out where they could go in terms of identifying areas that are basically underserved by physicians. And so here the individual dots are zip code centroids, and they're color-coded based on essentially the density of doctors in a particular area. And the blue points are doctor locations, and the red crosses are hospitals. And so you can see here that I can hover over a zip code and get all sorts of information. I can click on it and get a bunch more information. And I can look at it and say, well, obviously this area is really crowded because there's lots of physicians per person, but maybe a good place to go into would be this green area. And it sort of creates this easy way to visualize a whole lot of data. So that's pretty much it. Super fast, super useful. Will really save you a ton of time if you need to create some pretty maps and don't want to spend weeks and weeks learning some fancy software.
Sophia, I have 2 quick questions for you. Is this free?
Yes, it is. It is free up to a fairly large amount of data. I think it's like 50 gigs or something like that.
Does it do any state, or is it just Florida? I mean, it's not crippled, is it? I mean.
Oh, no. Florida just happens to be the area that I pulled out, but it will do the whole world. It also has a whole bunch of preloaded maps that you can play with. So a lot of preloaded data, like I think it will do like counties and zip codes and state areas, all sorts of things. This is just a very, very basic overview.
Somebody just asked a question I was about to ask. Can you export this as a GIF or a PDF or anything?
That's a good question. You can definitely export it as a GIF because I've seen them exported. I've never tried, to be honest. The best way to do it, it will actually give you a public link to the map itself, which is what this essentially is. So, it's kind of fun to play around with it and explore. But I'm pretty sure there's some functionality built in somewhere that will let you export things as well.
And if not, I suppose you could always do a screen capture. What's the name of this website? Somebody asked what the name of this website is. It's
called cartodb.com.
How hard is it to learn how to use this? Because I'm not that bright, but boy, this is cool.
I mean, I just showed you like what you need to do and to get to like 90% of a really basic map in under 4 minutes. I'd say, one caveat to this is it's a very new tool. It's literally like being beta tested right now, I think. So there are definitely some glitches. and some things that maybe should be simple aren't always. But I think compared to learning like something like D3, it's infinitely faster and infinitely easier than most tools that will let you do pretty maps out there, you know, unless if you need to do anything that's fancier than a Google map, basically.
Well, I think this is amazing. I'll tell you, every quarter I do these show and tells, and I learn so much from the students. It's enjoyable. I think I've hit 3 home runs tonight. Does anybody else, somebody asked a question, do you know if they keep your data or not, or how private is it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, obviously they store it for you. I have no idea. It never occurred to me to check, to be honest.
Wow, that is amazing. Does anybody else have any final questions, or we'll move on to the next person? But boy, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, what's the name of the software?
It's a website. It's called CartoDB. It's CartoDB.com.
Looks like, oh, here, wait a second. Tammy, I'm going to unmute you, Tammy. There you go. Tammy's got a question here. Sorry, Tammy, I had you muted. I think Tammy was asking, how did they get the data of latitude and longitude for the address?
So I use Google's API, which will basically let you get these, but actually I believe there's something built into CartoDB where they will geocode the data for you. I think they limit the number of locations that you can do. I don't remember what that limit is. It might be like 2,000 or something like that. And after that, you have to pay. But, I mean, Google's geocoding API is free, and if you know a little bit of like Python or Stata, or I'm sure R and SAS probably do it as well. There's usually a package for that. But yeah, you can do it through the tool as well.
Well, I don't have any other questions here. This was wonderful. Thank you very much, Sophia.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Does anybody else want to go? I'm going to unmute everybody, but let's see.
I'm ready.
Is that Tammy?
Yes.
Tammy, I'm going to make you the presenter. Just a sec. I have to demote Sophia first. Okay, so now, Tammy, you are officially the presenter now. But you may have to install some software, so hopefully we won't have any problems.
Installing.
Okay. I'm sort of toying with the idea the next time if we do a show and tell, maybe I'll invite my 411 class and let them listen in.
Well, that would be a good idea.
I never thought to do that.
No, Don, you got to make them wait and earn it.
Let them sweat, right?
Besides, they're not going to have time anyway, right?
No, they're not. Actually, it's well, heck, you just got out of 411, Alex. You know, it's not as bad as it used to be.
No, it's awesome. You're teaching it.
Oh. We all know who wants an A in the class, right?
Okay, so how do I share it now? I've downloaded it.
Well, you should have like a box there on the bottom that says like share my screen. There you go. Although sometimes that box takes, you might have to, I can see your arrow, but I can't see your screen. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Okay, Tammy, go get them.
Okay, well, our data set, we were brainstorming a whole bunch, and we came up with the idea actually it was my idea, that if we came up with a good way to predict whether or not a used car was good or bad, that it was something we could turn into a mobile app. So as I was thinking about presenting something, I thought, you know what? Any of our projects could be turned into a mobile app. Now, I am not a designer or a developer or that technologically advanced that I would be able to create an app on a mobile app, but I did some research and I found out it really isn't that hard. So the first questions you need to ask yourself is determine if your project will design a model, because that is what you want to base your mobile app on. And is that model going to analyze or predict something? What will it tell you? And will it help you make a decision? In our case, it was helping us making a decision of whether or not to buy a car. So that was kind of some criteria I was thinking about. And when you come to that decision and build that criteria, you can use that model or algorithm that you develop as a base for a mobile app. So when you're trying to design a mobile app, this is some of the research I found, that you need to figure out who is in your market. Are you going to solve a problem? And then one way to get started is to sketch out some kind of interface. I mean, we all use mobile apps on our iPhones, our Androids, or our iPads. We have an idea of how they're laid out, and so try to think of how your data could be presented and interfaced with in the type of intuitive interface that we're familiar with on any kind of mobile device. And then I did find out some important things. You need to do your research. You want to see if there are other apps that are similar. There's a million apps out there, so it's possible there's someone already thought of what you're doing. You can get ideas from other apps. I mean, even if something's similar, you may be able to use some ideas from that application to design yours that's unique and better. So you want to define your market and your niche. Determine how to monetize your app. Are you going to have ads on your app, or are you going to have users pay a fee? In our case, if we were going to develop some sort of mobile app to predict whether a used car is a lemon or not, it would be something car dealerships or car buyers would maybe pay a fee for. And maybe we can make a lot of money, so everybody likes money. Another thing that I found out you need to check with is legal issues, including copyright and privacy issues. Determine your technical requirements. And there's lots of resources on the web for building apps. There's like, I found like a dozen different websites that give you the tools almost totally free to build an application. And a lot of them do not even require any kind of programming expertise to build an application to be used on an iPhone or an Android device. So I thought, well, how can that be applied to our capstone projects? And I've looked at the projects that people are working on. For example, someone's doing one based on HR analytics. Now, there wasn't a lot of detail about their project, but I thought, obviously, you could design an app that could give a score based on a candidate metrics. Like, you could look at, well, how many years of college do they have? What kind of degree do they have? How old they are? What kind of skill sets they have? Test scores, that kind of thing. You could design an app that could give you a score based on candidate metrics. And then someone's doing something on sports analytics, and I saw that they are trying to come up with some sort of model based on player efficiency rating. And I thought, well, why not create a mobile app that a coach or team or a sports analyst could use to determine a player efficiency rating by inputting all the player metrics. And there was a couple projects that talked about credit risk, and so that would be a real obvious application to build an app that could produce a score or rating on the probability of default on a loan or a credit card. And then someone's doing something on music. I wasn't sure all the details of it, but then again, you could build an app that listens to music and gives it a score or some sort of probability of whether it could be a good sell or a good marketable song. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out there. That's what my whole presentation is about, is getting you thinking about how to take your project one step further. So I came up with an example that I use on my phone. It's called Fuel Buddy, and it gives you, you input all the data as you take care of your car. If you put in gas, you put in how much gas you put in, how much you paid for the gas. If you do an oil change or service, you put all in that information, and it accumulates all that data and gives you like a dashboard. So that could be something you could include in your application, some place to accumulate the data and give you results. And Fuel Buddy will tell you what's your average miles per gallon, how much money you've spent on gas. So it's just kind of a basic example of how a mobile app can use inputted data to give you information back that it's been accumulated and analyzed. Our project example is we wanted to build a model to determine whether a car is a lemon or not. We have accumulated hundreds of variables, actually, and we are going to model those variables and give a prediction on the odds of if the car is a bad buy or not. And in my idea, that the mobile app would actually give you a score as to the car's quote-unquote lemonability, which I coined that term, so I'll put a trademark after it. And I thought what you could do is have a mobile app that would incorporate our model and algorithms as an engine that drives it, and it would have drop-down menus, input the variables for the car, and it would just give you a score based on all the different factors of the car. Obviously, you would have a database with all the car's information, various types of models of cars already, so a lot of it would be built in, all that. Each individual car would have its data already in place. You would just have to basically tell your app what the car is in the year, and it could pull up that probability score right away. So obviously there would be a lot of different variations you could do on this app, and it would take more investigation and research, but that was kind of the basic idea. And that's my presentation.
So what language, or how do you, when you write these things, is it written in Java, or I'm not a programmer, so I hope that's not a bad
Neither am I. I'm not sure what language they use, but all the websites that I went to build apps, there's lots of different websites that give you step-by-step, like a storyboard that you can build your own app and have it be whatever you want, and it's very inexpensive.
Where did you, could you give us the links to the websites that, so if somebody wanted to build their own app for this class, where do you go, or do you have, oh, there, right here. Could you put this out there on the discussion board?
Sure, but all I did was Google how to build a mobile app, and there's tons of resources out there. And there's a couple articles. This is one that gives you, how do I go back? Okay, I'll paste the link after I get back to the chat. I don't know how to go back to the chat. Okay. Can I do it there? This one had actual article, kind of ratings of the different type of mobile app programs or websites out there that give you the ability to build apps, and kind of gives you an overview of what's good about each one and a link to each one. So
that is amazing. I had some students last quarter that I think, excuse me if I got this wrong, but I think they used Tableau, and then they created their own website so that, me as the CEO, I could log in and then click on, because they were doing a bicycle sharing application and with maps and stuff, and I could click on anything I wanted and it would expand and everything. Nobody's ever done a cell phone app for me before, but that would, the website just, blew me away. But I think this, I'd have to retire if somebody did a cell phone app, because that would just be,
well, I'm not claiming I'm doing it. But.
I'm just saying, if anybody ever gets to doing that, that would be like one of these things where I don't think I would just be able to die a happy man after that point if a student ever did something like that. So, that's just throwing that out there, hoping some student does it, because I would really love to see that.
Okay. Can you still see my screen, or how do I give it back? Or
I can take it away just a minute here.
Okay.
So I thought that was really, really nice. Thank you very much, Tammy.
You're welcome.
So let's see. So Brian, Brian asked where you got the training data set for your car lemons.
On Kaggle. It's one of the Kaggle competitions from a few years ago. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. And we have augmented that data with other data sets to fill in more information for each of the vehicle records. Like we got a data set on all recalled cars, and then we added a binary variable saying if that vehicle had ever been recalled. We also added FEMA data to see if it had ever been a flood zone. So we kind of wanted to round out the Kaggle data so we would be a little bit different.
Wow. You guys are hardcore, man.
Well, our Todd is kind of taking the lead, and yeah, he is a little more hardcore than me.
Well, that's good though. I mean, it's neat when you have a team of people with variety of different skills and interests, because the entire or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it's always neat.
Definitely. And yeah, and we're just trying to keep up with Todd, but we are doing our best.
So Brian was asking how they got the data. Brian, I think I've seen that data set. I don't know. I don't think that Kaggle disclosed where they got the original data, but I'm sure
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's really remarkable. Does anybody else want to present tonight? We got 4 people have presented.
I can go next.
I'll go ahead and try.
Well, we got Nicole Rudney got first, typed it in first. Nicole, you want to go next? And then how many other people want to go tonight? Whoops, I made Nicole a host. I want to make you a presenter. I'm sorry. Just a second. And I'm going to unmute you, Nicole.
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Nicole. Before we do anything, I'm just curious how many people would like to present tonight. I heard some other people volunteering.
Well, this is William. I was thinking about it, but it's getting kind of late.
No. We'll do it all night. We're doing fine. Don't worry. We got Jin on is next. Wants to go. Everybody's got 10 minutes, so it looks like we got Jin, we've got Nicole, and we've got you. So that should be that. I think we can do it. My sync sessions usually run long anyway, right? Okay.
All right, should I go?
Yep, you are officially get to go, Nicole, as soon as we get to see your screen.
Oh, you can't see it right now? Hold on a second.
Not yet. We're still...
oh, sure. Okay. Can you see it now?
Not yet. I still see I can see it now.
Okay. So I don't know about all of you guys, but I've forgotten how easy and efficient pivot tables are when I'm trying to learn R, finish assignments, and I need to do EDA quick. Like I just did these last 2 weeks for an interview that I'm going on where I was given a large case study. And I don't know, it just kind of sparked some interest. And I don't know if everybody else is a whiz at this, but I just thought I would lay out some things that I've learned from using pivot tables and share it. So I created this PowerPoint with ways, like basically how to utilize a pivot table for quick EDA if you have to make a chart. What I noticed was I, along with other students, can struggle when I'm trying to use R for EDA 100% of the time because I'm still learning R. So although I've been able to make graphics in R, it's been time consuming, and I think So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some preliminary steps of how to create a pivot table, select chart type, create axis and data labels, axis layout tricks, and bar chart background and coloring. Pretty simple, because that's about all I know how to do with this. So initially, when you have your data set, you want to click this corner here to highlight what you're looking to set up a pivot table for. Then you want to select the pivot table button here. And then you just want to make sure that the cells here that you've highlighted are the ones that you want to be working with for your chart. The cells that were on top, that were highlighted on top, now are over here for you to select from. So you can pick and choose what you want to put mission mash together and create a chart with. After you've selected the cells that you want to do, you just want to make sure that the cells are in the correct spot. Most of the time, what I've noticed is they sometimes all fall on their values. So you just need to make sure that you set it up correctly so that the chart reflects what you're trying to display. You want to go to the pivot table tool and probably select Analyze first, and then select the Pivot Chart button to start creating your chart. Then on the left here, you want to select the type of chart that you want, or you can just play around with this to see what type of chart would best display what you're trying to convey, and then double-click up here with the options. So once you select your chart, then it'll give you an idea of how it might look. And then, like I said, you can go back if you don't like the way it looks and keep choosing until then. If you want to label your chart, if you want to add a chart title, you can do that here with this plus symbol. If you want to add a legend, data labels, chart title, you can just click on all these and it'll add it for you. If you want to change the way the values show up on your chart, so if you want it to be an average versus a sum, you can double-click on one of the values that you've dragged down to the bottom here and select Value Field Settings. And then this box will pop up, which will allow you to change the way that it's displayed. So with the EDA that I did for this case study, for the interview I did, I did sum versus average just to see what the difference would be. On these charts, these buttons will appear. If you don't want them there, you can right-click on it and hide all field buttons. You can also add numbers. Let's say it's a chart like this where there's just 5 and you want to show what the actual numbers are. You can click on the bar charts and then select Add Data Labels, and then numbers will appear like this. If you want to get rid of extra data, you can select from the drop-down for row labels, blank and uncheck it, and then it will disappear. Okay, if you want to format your y-axis, you want to double-click on that and then change, let's say you want it to start from 0, which is normally what we're looking for so that the data is not misrepresented. You would just go over here to minimum, put 0 in, and then just click on the chart again. And then it'll show up like this, even though there's a big difference between the way this looks and this. Let's see. You can also, what else did I say here? Oh, you can also change the way the units are displayed on the left here. If you don't want it to be as noisy, it's not that bad here, but if you'd like to change it to, say, in thousands, you can click on display units and change it to thousands, and then it'll show up like this, and then the word thousands will appear. All right, so if you want to move the data labels, you can double-click on them again and you'll have to move them one at a time, but you can click on them and move them up or wherever you want them to be placed. So I did that, and I just moved them so that people can see the numbers. And then if you want to change the way the x-axis looks, I have here horizontal, but you can change it to, which I had to do with my case study. I had 33 states. I found that the 90-degree angle worked better for showing all of the data, which it appears like this, even though this doesn't work for this chart. It's an option. If you want to color code the bars, you want to double click on the bars again, and then you want to select the type of fill that you're looking for. I usually choose solid because it's not as noisy, and then you want to pick the color here. If you want to change the background of your chart, you can double click on that and also do the type of fill you want for the background and then the color. And then finally, you want to change, if you want to change the font so you can read it, you want to double click on that also. Go to home and then select the font color. And then this is your final chart. But what I found with pivot tables was that I was able to make 30 to 50 charts pretty quickly and play around with the data. I tried to do it all in R, and although I was able to make some visuals, in the 2-week span that I had to work on it, I wasn't able to develop a story. I'm still learning it, so that is it, and this is what I chose to discuss. Any questions?
Are you're gonna post these PowerPoints, because this looks like a really nice step-by-step way to do this.
Yeah, no, it's out there already.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I don't know how to do this, but it looks to me like you're, you know, with a tutorial approach like this, I think it's a lot more likely students will be able to utilize this. Does anybody have any questions for Nicole before we move on? Nicole, I think you're off the hook.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It's an area I know nothing about. Let's see. Okay, who's gonna? Let's see. We have Jen on, and who's the other person that's interested in talking tonight?
Yeah, Don, that was me, William.
Oh, William.
I think I'm going to defer.
You're going to defer?
It's kind of late for me.
Are you sure? I feel bad
Yeah,
for you.
I had a late night, and I'm tired.
Okay, that's great. We're going to give you we'll give you a pass. We're going to have another one of these in about maybe 2 weeks, and I'll let you.
Okay,
and I'll let you go first. I'm very, very sorry that it was too late for you.
No problem.
Okay, Jen, we're going to let you go. Are you okay with? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, definitely ready to go.
Okay, just a minute. I have to make Nicole a participant. And Jen, I'm going to make you the presenter. Okay, Jen, you are on.
Never heard that before.
Okay. Hey, before you get started, is there anybody else who cares to present tonight? Okay, so you are our last presenter tonight, Jen.
Great. So my presentation is going to be about a specific algorithm. And just to preface everything, I'm not an expert. This is definitely just stuff that I've learned from deploying a random forest model at work. You get a lot of questions from your customers, and depending on the end users, a lot of my, for example, clinicians and my physicians did not need to be this specific, but a lot of my actuaries and my analysts wanted to be very specific. They wanted to know, how does the random forest go from the original data set to this output? So that's kind of like what my presentation is going through, and hopefully it brings things down to layman's terms and doesn't make the random forest sound so complicated. So first, at a high level, what is the random forest? I'm sure some of you have heard of Leo Bremen and Adel Cutler Freeman's the fellow who wrote that paper on statistics of the two cultures. But whenever I think about the random forest, I think of it as a combination of an ensemble model and bagging. And I'll go through exactly what those two terms are, and then I'll explain how the random forest is kind of a marriage of the two. The error of a random forest is based strictly on the correlation between the trees in the forest and the strength of each individual tree. Again, this will make more sense as I go through. And another thing about the random forest is that it can handle a large number of input variables without depending on any specific feature selection methodologies, and it also naturally shows which variables are the most significant. So an ensemble model, just a high level, it's multiple models that you put in some sort of decision logic from that output to have your ensemble prediction. And the way that you have that decision logic to combine everything, it's different depending on if you're having a classification problem or a regression problem. So for classification, you'll take a majority of the votes. So a different way to explain that is if you have these 5 decision trees, and for this one observation of your original data set, you're getting that the output is a 1 instead of a 0, 3 out of the 5 decision trees. That means you're taking the mode of those outputs, and then your ensemble prediction will be 1. For regression, you're taking an average of the output. A way of thinking about that is averaging the probabilities. Bagging. So bagging is when you create many data sets by first bootstrapping, and bootstrapping is just random sampling with replacement, and you create a decision tree on each of those bootstrap data sets. And then you combine these decision trees by averaging or voting the final decision. So it sounds similar to ensemble models. But what makes both bagging and ensemble modeling married together to make a random forest is that as each bootstrap sample is growing a tree, it also takes a random sample of those predictors, your initial predictors in your original data set, and chooses the best split among those variables. And that was something that I had to really explain to my actuaries, that I'm not looking at each predictor when I'm building each individual tree. So then you predict on the new data by aggregating all these predictions, just like with bagging by majority votes for classification and averaging for regression. This is just a visual way of seeing the random forest methodology. Kind of explained it again in the last slide, but you guys can go through this. An interesting thing about the random forest error is that as each tree is built, you have to remember that not each tree contains every single record from the original data set. So what each tree does is that, or what you have to do is to collect all the trees that do not include a specific data point, and that's called your out-of-bag example, and that's what Freeman and Cutler called that observation. And then you run that data point down trees that do not have that data point. And then again, you have to aggregate the votes only over the trees built without that data point. And Freeman has lots of studies to show that this out-of-bag estimate is as accurate as using a test set of the same size as the training set. So that's something that we're used to here, where we split our original data sets to training and test. The random forest has an internal way of calculating this error rate. Variable importance. This is a question I got a lot from my customers asking me. How did you get your output? What is really contributing to your response variable? Blah, blah, blah. So variable importance, for me to explain to them how I figured out which variables are significant, is that there's a metric in the random forest package in R called the mean decrease Gini, and it's also known as your node impurity in tree-based classification. So in my head, the mean decrease Gini shows the highest mean decrease Gini shows the most significant variable, because in my head it shows the first split of a tree, and it adds up all of your Gini decreases for each of the trees to show just kind of a quick way to show which one's the most important in terms of prediction. So for my general experience with the random forest, I've only had experience running it in R, but I heard that the SAS Enterprise Miner, the most recent release, will have a node that can incorporate R code. and my organization just purchased this, so hopefully I can incorporate whatever models I do have in production into Enterprise Miner. Some quick positives is that the variable importance does help with interpretation. The out-of-bag error rate helps in determining if the models need to be reevaluated, and it can handle many variables, which is helpful because a lot of my projects have up to 400, 500 variables. But some negatives to this is that depending on the volume of data and the number of trees, it can be very time-consuming to run. And if we don't have representative samples of our original data set or have enough trees to build all of your individual trees in your forest, your estimates will not be very stable. And this is a very simple R code set that I usually use. This is the format I use. I copy and paste this, whatever I want to try out. And most of the time I'm running multiple models to compare all these different methodologies to see which one would be my winning model. But whenever the random forest is my winning model, I need to go back and try to explain this to my customers in a way that they'll sign off on it and actually help me get this into production. And yeah, that was random forest in what, 9 minutes, 8 minutes?
That is a remarkable that you can explain it so clearly in such a short amount of time. I mean, obviously you didn't crawl into the weeds, but it really gave a good overview. I see you have that plot RF fit there. Could you answer me a question? I mean, if you got 500 trees there, you're obviously not plotting all 500 trees. What does that plot? What is that plotting?
I honestly don't remember. I'll actually, when I post this, I'll try to get the output of this line of code as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, because I believe that when the random forest object in R produces all of the metrics that come in with that random forest, so it's not just the tree that you're plotting, it shows all of your like how many trees it had, what kind of Gini index you have, all those different metrics that come with your random forest object. So I'll also put the output of this code. So I'll remember to do that before I post it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Because I'm just curious. Because I obviously you're not going to put 500 trees there, so it's plotting something. But what is? I'd love to see. That's really amazing. I think random forests are one of those tools that is not. It's just like a decision tree in that it's powerful, but people don't use it anywhere near as much as they should. So I hope people.
I've learned that, like with my experience, even though everyone says random forest is very accurate, it doesn't have bias, but when you actually run this in the real world and you have customers that are affected by these predictive models, they're not going to sign off on something that you don't understand or can't explain.
But you could use a random forest as sort of a baseline. So they'll sign off on, let's say, a regression. But if you can say, look, this random forest and this neural network, you don't understand them, but my regression is pretty close. That at least gives them confidence that you got a pretty good model. So you can use it as sort of a straw man to at least validate a model.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. But so far, I've only had experience with pushing this into production and discussing with many different types of departments. So it taught me a lot about knowing your audience.
Well, I've enjoyed this. Does anybody have any questions for Jen? I think Mary Weitkamp is typing something. It's Veltkamp. We got Mary is already going to use your talk.
That's great. Yeah, I'll definitely try to upload the presentation once I have some output for you guys.
Very good. Does anybody else have any care to present tonight? If not, I'll be posting this link soon, and hopefully everyone can post their slides or any other resources on the discussion board. Okay. Well, I guess on that note, we'll adjourn early tonight at 10:16. I just want to thank all of the presenters. This is really useful, and it's great to just share this information. And I really am grateful for the people who prepared talks for tonight. Okay, everyone, be good.
Thanks. You too. Be good.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.